Okay, so ultimately you end up with this cone that has this copper gradient filled through this piece. A lot of similarities as far as the windows are set up, so I'll just kind of start with a new layer. I have a few layers up here already, so I'm just going to title this one Cone, and if it's a new document, then you'll just start off with a new window. Again, as you get into Photoshop, some of the recent files that you may have opened, there's the slash mark in between. And if you go to Photo, it'll give you the default size, so you can go to 3. This one right here just to create it, so I'll start it from scratch just to show it to you. I'm going to create a new layer. The layer behind it is going to, the eyeball next to it will show you the transparency of the two. And just click on the first one and just title it Cone. On the toolbar, again inside the tools has the corner piece which shows the different tools that are selected in there. The first top right one is the marquee selection of the letter M. Creating a rectangular shape just to get it started. There's nothing in there, but if I hold Option Delete, it'll fill whatever the foreground color is. So right now it's just an empty piece, and clicking keystroke of G for the gradient will get you the gradient editor up at the top. And the one that they highlight is the copper. I showed this before, and again, when you click and drag, it'll take this linear section across, depending on which way you drag or how far you drag, top to bottom. If you take the experiment with the others, it'll show the circular, the radial motion, parts on either side, shading that way, that's not too bad. But it'll show you this piece. But the first one on the left, just showing it with the options. If you click from edge to edge with the Shift key, it'll make that piece that is then going to be transformed into the cone. So under Edit is where you see the transform in perspective, and you'll get these bounding box handles, and this is where you can stretch this back and forth, and it goes right to the point. And that makes the initial part. So you either hit Return or the checkbox to make this selection. And you can see this marquee selection they call running ants or marching ants. Goes around the selection itself, and now it's just a matter of trying to take the selection and delete part of it. So showed this a little before. If you hold the Command key, it turns to the arrow, and you can deselect under Select, Deselect, or Command D. First part, this is an elliptical shape. The space bar allows you to move it around. When you let go, it resets itself. And just kind of looking for a space that is the same width of the cone. And if you click inside of it, it'll start another selection. If you move it, you can see it's moving it as a piece. And if you have this highlighted, it'll add to it. So depending on which option you have chosen, deselect it just to stretch it out again. Shift key keeps it into a circle, otherwise it will stay an ellipse that you can modify. So here's the distance for it, and just using the space bar to come up so it's tangent to the bottom. And if I hit the delete key, it takes out the selection that I want to actually keep. I want to get the opposite side. So the idea is to go with the other selection. So just using a marquee of a rectangle, and here it's adding to it, or the Shift key will let you add to the selection. And this is the part. Again, if I delete that, undo it, you have one undo under Edit or Command Z. And then this is the select. So I'm just going to inverse it so the opposite is taken out, and that takes out that selection. And then just go to Select, Deselect. So there's pretty much the cone section. There's other ways to do it, but that's just a quick way to create that shape. In the layers, when you double click on it, it'll bring up the layer styles. There's a lot of them here. The bottom one is the drop shadow. This allows you to adjust it on screen so you can modify this piece. And inside, whichever one you select, all the parameters go along with it, and it'll be a checkbox just taking these on and off. So you can experiment with those as you go. But multiply allows the shadow, the distance of the blur, the angle of the shadow, so depending on which angle you choose. And this can also be adjusted on screen, the positioning of it. Just going to go ahead and click OK, and that gives you this section. The eyeball next to it will add or take away that drop shadow. Okay. So once you have it done the first time, see if you can do an inverse of that selection. So I'm just going to create another layer, repeat the same process. G for the gradient, just go side to side. And under Edit, Transform, I'll do the perspective again. Just line it right up to that middle point. And just hit Return if you like that section. And select, deselect. And in order to make this easier, I'm just going to create one more layer for the elliptical shape. Click the ellipse and see whether or not I can make the bottom part of this selection there it is. Just use the gradient and just click and drag to see if you can get the shadow. Now remember, if you click and drag so that it goes the entire distance, it'll show you everything that's within that gradient. If you overlap it, it'll stretch itself across, so it gives you a little bit of a linear piece like this. Command plus or minus decreases the shadow there, so you have that option to work with. So it's just a quick way to see if you can get the elliptical part going. And then zoom in. These bounding boxes allow you to adjust the size of this. So if it's too large or not at the right angle, or you want it more a little tighter angle like that, drop this down. The arrow keys also let you adjust that. So that's one way to build that piece in. These two layers, I'm just going to select them, and if I right click on them, you can actually merge them under merge, so they become one layer. And this effects, I'm just going to option and drag, so it gives the same drop shadow effect onto that piece. Okay. And then the last part, take the text tool, choose a color, and see if you can put your name. If you just click, you'll see at the top, you'll get the font, the size, the color, alignment, all the options up at the top. And I'm just going to place a piece in there and just adjust, try to give you a little practice inside of there with that section there. And here you can also shift key and edit it right on the screen, scale it, get some ideas for it. When you accept it, just click the checkbox there. If you hit the tab key, all the tools will disappear. If you hit the letter F, it'll toggle through 3 different methods for adjusting the screen, and plus or minus, so if you're just trying to show it for the presentation,